So a couple of things before I get started. So I'd love to know, so I obviously see the names, what schools you're at, what chapters you're out, but would love to start things off with just something a little fun. So you all see that I have this badge on the front page here. And I feel like we all have something from Ritual or something that you learned from Ritual that brings home what this fraternity means to you. And so I'd love to know, is there anybody out there who has like a specific symbol or badge or anything that they really, really like? This could be, the flag, it could be anything. Feel free to come off mute.
I would say the founder's badge is awesome, man. That's my favorite.
Yep. All right, cool. Great. Anybody else? And actually, if you could say your name too, because I have a weird version of Zoom because we use Google Meets at Google. Anyways, if you could just say your name so I could see you just in case too.
Yeah. Jackson Hall, SIG at Oklahoma State.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackson. Anybody else? All right. Well, that's cool. Appreciate y'all. And hopefully you all have something that you really appreciate about SIG in the same way. Okay, cool. So if we can go to the next slide there, Pat. Cool. So just to share a little bit about myself, my name is Joshua Gutierrez, as Pat mentioned. I'm a Google University specialist, where I currently lead our Hispanic serving institution outreach across the U.S. So prior to Google, I actually graduated from an HSI, which is a big reason why I love recruiting at these universities, State San Bernadino. And I graduated in 2009. I taught middle school science for 3 years after that on the Navajo Reservation in New Mexico. And then I began recruiting at Teach for America in 2012. But as you all know, it really began in 2005 when I first joined SIGEP. But when I was in Boston, I actually recruited at in Teach for America, I recruited in Boston at a variety of universities, including MIT and BU. In 2014, around 2013, I met a Google recruiter at MIT who was like, "Hey, you should come, recruit at Google." And I was like, "How do I work at Google?" But I ended up recruiting at Google. So I got recruited by a recruiter who was recruiting recruiters. And the two roles I've had since joining, I've had the privilege of building my entire focus on ensuring that students from underrepresented backgrounds and universities really find professional opportunities. So right now I currently live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, go Blue, with my beautiful wife, who she was also in a sorority. So I don't know if you can see these up here, but we like to keep our letters up there. Very, very proud. Yeah, so just really excited to be here with all of you today. But before going forward, I also want to just give an enormous shout out to all of you out there, especially if there's anybody from Cal Upsilon who gets to watch this later. I'm really proud of this. A lot of my story and what I'm going to share in just a bit comes from the experiences I had when I first joined my home fraternity, which is the same experience for all of you. The experience you have with SIGEP, it grows and grows, but it always starts at that home chapter. So. And for me, there were two momentous occasions in my SIGEP life that I'm going to speak to as I walk through this story. But that's RUC Leadership Academy and its conclave. And before I even begin discussing what a year-round recruitment strategy even looks like, we have to start with what pulls people into SIGEP. So to start with that, I want to share a portion of a speech that I saw at conclave in 2007. So Pat, you can go to the next slide. And then feel free to press play. It should be timed right. Oh, can't hear it.
These other men who've been recognized here tonight received the Order of the Golden Heart. And what they have done for this fraternity over the years and the contributions that they have made to young men's lives makes mine pale by comparison, and I am truly humbled to be now in their company.
So there's a really short clip, and there wasn't a lot said there other than him talking about all of his other brothers that had received this Order of the Golden Heart. And if any of you know, that was Grand Chapter President Archie Yates when I was actually in chapter, and he was receiving the Golden Heart. And really, why did that move me? I was in college like you. I was seeing leaders at that time who were bigger than life to me, but he was speaking with one intention in mind, and that was others. Brother Yates didn't speak about his own accomplishments, but he was humbled to be in that kind of crowd of other folks that inspired him. The inspiration of being a servant leader, of being a principled man. And so when you speak to SIGEP, and this is kind of where I'll be going with the direction of this whole presentation, is you might be speaking to someone who could be a future Order of the Golden Heart recipient, who is looking at the fraternity life with a lot of skepticism, skepticism about brotherhood, or skepticism of these types of organizations, fraternity organizations in general. Even more today than when I was in college, I see that the fraternity life is struggling because of obviously the way we're represented in the media and movies and all that stuff, but really because of how we have represented ourselves. And to me, there is a healthy skepticism with fraternities, and your job is to inspire a new perspective into what parts of SIGEPs will move them to leadership. So before I was ever able to be inspired by someone like Archie Yates and the larger SIGEP Brotherhood, I want to speak about why I chose to join this fraternity in the first place. So if you go to the next slide, really in 2005, I entered CSU San Bernadino with no intention of joining a fraternity. And during that time, a few guys in my dorm were joining fraternities. Like most of all of you, I would party with them. So I was always hanging out with SIGEPs, or the folks who were hanging out with SIGEPs. But during that time, I actually met someone in that SIGEP group, because I had no intention of joining SIGEP. I was cool hanging out, partying with them because they were my dorm buddies, you know, but I didn't want to join. But I met this guy, Mike Perez, who is in all these pictures. And he was a SIGEP that hung out with these friends of mine. And he spoke to me about SIGEP in a way that was really passionate. He cared deeply about it. He saw it as more than just partying or a bunch of guys acting nuts, which during the time of my chapter was a little crazy. But he really convinced me to at least look into SIGEP. And so that entire fall and winter, Mike invited me to recruitment events, dinners at Buffalo Wild Wings with SIGEP alumni, or baseball games or sporting events, whatever it was. We were becoming friends, but he was also showing me what he loved about SIGEP. And I still really didn't want to join. But just hanging out with him, getting to know him and some of the other brothers, in spring, I ended up joining SIGEP. And I'll be honest, I did not enjoy it at all. And maybe some of you had this experience when you first joined. We had a lot of internal problems, and we were a really disorganized chapter. But what I'll always remember at that time wasn't that I felt overwhelmed with the challenges. It was that I was weirdly honored to try and help them fix them. Like, I was honored to be part of this organization. And when I look back on those times, I'm like, why was I so excited to be part of this? And why was I trying to fix that? During that entire fall, I hung out with my future big brother, which ended up being Mike, and he did the following. He related with me, supported my interests. We would talk about so many important topics, from philosophy to religion. We bonded over those things. We were both Christian. He would support that I truly valued school, that I was a really nerdy dude, and that's what I wanted to do. That I wanted to be smart and learn new things in life. He showed me the LROB, and he talked to me about what the Balanced Man program identified. And he emphasized how SIGEP would actually help me with my grades, which weirdly was true, even though it didn't work that way for some of my other brothers. Again, we were pretty disorganized at that time. We got better. It's doing great now. But when I became unhappy with the fact that I had joined this organization, I remember something else that Mike did. He told me, why don't you be the one to fix it? He inspired me with the messages that we live in SIGEP, that leadership really starts with taking responsibility, that individual responsibility. It starts with you for the greater organization. And the last thing he did was really simple. He invited me to events. He was quick to always be sure I was invited to wherever they went, whether it was the movies or hanging out. If I wasn't there, he'd text me or call me, or he'd just tell me to roll over. He always made me feel included with the chapter. Even things like study groups became fun because I was able to hang out with these brothers. And I immediately felt a kinship based on what this fraternity meant, even though I was just so new to it. If you can go to the next slide. So it's pretty clear what Mike was doing. He was actually showing me the difference between a brotherhood and a friendship. And that's really where I wanted to start with this whole picture of when we think about year-round recruitment, because it sounds a little daunting, it sounds scary at times, but the reality is that you want to kick things off in the very beginning with this feeling of relationships. Students aren't hungry for more networking, they're hungry for deeper bonds and for opportunities to connect in a meaningful way. So we kick to the next slide. So I want to show you a timeline of what this all looked like. So to begin, it really all started in the early fall, right? A freshman on campus, had no intentions of joining a fraternity, but I met this guy, Mike, right, at this party with all these other SIGEP brothers. And just started hanging out on campus. Early fall, he would invite me to go to the movies, hang out with some of the brothers. I told him I was not going to join this fraternity. I didn't have any interest in it. He would still invite me, was cool with me coming to the recruitment events, even knowing that I had no intentions. Mid-fall, he would kind of keep that going, right? Keep inviting me to those recruitment events. But by the time late fall came around, I started to feel that kinship towards SIGEP. I started to see what that bond was. I started seeing examples of that philosophy, even though it wasn't there always with my greater chapter. I saw the benefits and the examples of just this one person and what he was bringing to my life. And then by the time early winter came around, I joined SIGEP. So the reason I wanted to show you this timeline is because it's really similar to what I do in my current job. So if you go to the next slide. Thanks, Pat. What does my recruitment at Google look like? So when I start with my job, this is a different timeline. I'm starting now because I want you all to picture what I'm doing right now in my current role. I host events, I host summits that are related to technical leadership development for students at Hispanic serving institutions. So when I engage with these campuses and this recruitment efforts, I start by hosting these events, inviting students. Around late spring, I start to connect students with multiple Googler connections. So people who are related to their interests, whether if you're a software engineer, I'm going to connect you with some engineer that I know. If you go to Florida International University, I'm going to connect you with an alumni from Florida International University. So I would try to make these dots, right? And sometimes I'm a technical recruiter, so I'll meet students who are like, "Oh, I'm really interested in business." And I go, "Oh, you know what? I have a friend who went to your campus at UT El Paso, and let me connect you with him so you get to know him." And then this summer, what I do is I continue those relationships by encouraging students to apply for roles related to their skill set. So I try to find these roles and opportunities that fit their lives. And by the time fall comes around, I've already got this student connection. I already know who this student is, who it is that I've been reaching out to, who it is I've been connecting with on these campuses. I check on their application statuses. I work with their recruiters to make sure that they're taken care of. I connect them with other technical programs and opportunities, because guess what? I don't know everything, right? I'm just a human resource officer at my company, really, truly. I'm not a technical recruit, an engineer. I don't have these skill sets. So I find the right people to connect them with. And I'll help them find those programs and opportunities that might fit their roles, even if they're not able to get that job that they're looking for at that moment. And then going forward, I just continue to reconnect with as many, that student with as many roles and opportunities as they're looking for. And so over time, that relationship is built. And I have tons of students who don't even work at Google, who we still will email, once a quarter, because we have that relationship built. They know that they can come to me if they're ever looking for a job at Google. I could turn to them if I'm ever saying, hey, I'm interested in changing my career path. We built a real, true, unique relationship. Yes, I'm a recruiter at a company and they're paying me, but the bigger picture is to actually get them into the company. I need to build that relationship and show them that we want them to be part of the company because we value what they're bringing to it. So you can go to the next slide. So that's really the message I want to bring to all of you. As I was mentioning before, what I do, and to be clear, I'm paid to do it, and that's not the same case with you all at SIGEP, but is work to build connections with students and Googlers who share unique interests and backgrounds, identities, whatever it is. And what I really try to do is ensure is that I can be as genuine as possible by recognizing that I can't build relationships with every student. I can't build relationships with every person I'm trying to recruit. There are so many Googlers out there, though, that I can actually, who are passionate, right? They're passionate about bringing students into the company. They're passionate about bringing students into tech. I just need to tie together those opportunities, those relationships, those connections to help that student get where they need to go. And you all are doing the same thing. You have a deep connection to the fraternity, but you might not be the exact guy this PNM is wanting to connect with, right? Who in your chapter is that person that will be able to connect with and build that initial friendship with? Which alumni is it that you can connect them with to share that unique message that person needs to hear? That, oh, I see why these guys are into this. Okay, I get it. If you go to the next slide. So for my last example, I want to tie it all together with an alumni that really transformed my whole life and my leadership style. So when I first started getting connected to other members and alumni, Mike, my big brother, and many of the other brothers at the time immediately connected me with our chapter counselor, Dave Calderon. And he wasn't from Cal Upsilon, but he was an alumni of our big brother chapter, Cal Mu, which was at Cal Poly Pomona. And, there were just immediate connections as we started meeting. And he, Dave was actually coming to these recruitment events and he was talking to me. He was a lawyer. He was passionate with his opinions, but he could back them up. So we were getting into really great conversation. But he was also never really afraid to challenge us, our chapter, our opinions. So I remember when I first joined SIGEP, again, I was really frustrated. I didn't like it. But I remember Dave coming to these meetings and being so fired up about how much he loved SIGEP and why he would get so disheartened with the fact that, we weren't as organized as we needed to be, or we weren't doing the right thing. And he would challenge us and he would push us. And for me, that really resonated with me. He immediately encouraged me into leadership. And I took to his example. And as I mentioned, he often challenged me and we learned some really tough lessons during that time. But what it led to was a lifelong connection and relationship that I'll always value. So if you go next slide, sorry, almost there. So to tie this all going forward, I want you to take these two lessons in your recruitment strategy. If you keep these two principles at the center of your recruitment, PNMs will see whatever message you're trying to share is genuine because you're not actually selling them on anything. You're really just inviting them to join in an incredible brotherhood of learning, development, and leadership opportunities. And really with this building connections piece, this is where the power of diversity of your chapter comes in. Two of the other members I joined with at the time were my roommates, DJ and Jorge. And all three of us were really different from one another. We were really unique characters. Like Jorge was a DJ, it's just funny because DJ wasn't anyways. So, we were all just very different. We shared unique interests. But what was important that each of us, I remember at the time is each of us was really connected to different brothers who identified with the things we cared about. They leveraged that uniqueness when they made those connections. And, because really this doesn't need to all fall on you. Your job is just really to leverage those connections with your brothers. Okay, so next slide. All right, so what does this look like tangibly? So I know we're getting ready to hop into breakouts in a bit, but I asked Pat to share with me a few examples of chapters who are doing this year-round recruitment right. And what was really, not surprising to me as we were putting this session together was that they were always centered around building relationships and connections for PNMs. So if you can go to the next slide just really quickly. So one example that he shared with me was Missouri Alpha, and this chapter does an excellent job continuing to hold weekly recruitment committee meetings. They assign PNMs to specific committee members for every single outreach and interaction, and they vote on bids almost every week. So these are ways that they're making sure that they're building those connections for students immediately. Is anybody from Missouri Alpha out there? Do they want to share a little bit about? Yeah, tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so thank you, Pat, I guess, for saying our chapter. Pat comes to all of our committee meetings, so he knows everything that goes on, which we're appreciative of, and very sad that, he's no longer going to be with us following May 1st. But no, this semester, Missouri Alpha, I should mention, is a new chapter. We joined we restarted in 2019 after getting kicked off in 2017, and essentially what we've done in recruitment this semester, really that's been a big push and kind of something that's really helped is we've created almost kind of this culture of recruitment where every single guy, I've had, I think, 5 guys this semester who have joined the chapter and 2 days later sent me the name of a guy that they think would be good for SIGEP. It's that sort of thing. We've got guys in the chapter generating those leads that allow for us to be successful. And as we continue to grow, I'm also going to continue to train other brothers and to have those recruitment conversations so that, it's not just me doing that part. We've moved on from just one guy finding all the leads. Next, we're going to move on from just one guy having all those recruitment conversations until we really have that entire chapter that's really recruiting. And I think that's really the biggest way that we found success here this semester.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lucas. That was perfect. And I think what you described is exactly that, right? You realize you're not doing all the recruitment. You're having your brothers do that by helping them build those connections, leverage those unique traits of the different members of your chapter to build those. And the next chapter actually on this list is Mississippi Beta. And similarly, when we were looking at them, one thing that was really interesting was they utilized FaceTime and other video means this past year to interview PNMs and to get to know them way ahead of formal recruitment. So even though this was a challenge, and all of you, again, are out here on this virtual life right now, and I don't know how you're even motivated to do these things, I appreciate that. But this resulted in bids being extended and accepted before, during, and after formal recruitment because they were taking this time to meet with folks. Is anybody out there from Mississippi Beta that want to say a few thoughts on this? It's okay if you're not. Tisk, tisk. No, I'm just kidding. It's all good. Well, they'll see the recording. So great. This is going to the last example. And the final example we discussed was Illinois Beta. And in addition to meeting weekly and assigning PNM to chapter members, so again, making those connections, they also really did a great job at maintaining a calendar of regularly scheduled chapter interactions or events to invite PNMs to. So I think that's a really great example of a unique way of making sure that they have these events constantly teed up so that folks can always have a place to interact with brothers. Is anybody out there from Illinois Beta that wants to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm Ben.
Hey.
I'm our Vice President of Recruitment at Illinois Beta. So similar to, I forget, the one, two examples ago, we also are newer on campus because we were kicked off in 2013 and we recharted in 2017. So we've been rebuilding our chapter, and yeah, that's our big focus is that, recruitment is something that involves the entire chapter. And it's, especially for us at a school of less than 3,000 undergrads, there's a lot of very good interpersonal relationships, which is our main thing. We get most of our members from people who know people, not people from the outside coming in, although we do get some of them. But it's really, really important for us that a lot of our members, they know people already and they talk to them frequently. And that's how we get to meet them, socialize, hang out with them, talk to them about SIGAP, academics, what they want their future to be like, get to know them really well, and they end up joining.
That's awesome. And you said all the key words there, interrelationships, building those connections. And you even mentioned this culture of recruitment. So Ben, that was really great. I think that's exactly what we want to think about this as. This is a culture of recruitment that we're trying to build. And again, we're not recruiting them for some random organization. This is an organization we believe in because of the principles that we hold, and we want to find those members who we can actually connect our other brothers with, so we can build those unique bonds. Because again, we're all very diverse and different in the way that we connect and communicate within SIGEP. Okay, I know we're a little bit out of time, so I'm going to skip this one. If that's cool, Pat. And just kind of wrap us all up here and to bring us home. I want to just say, for me, what I think really took my leadership in a way that I feel it really took me to the next level was, being part of SIGEP, being president of my chapter, being president of the Interfraternity Council when I was in college. But it was going to RUC, it was going to Conclave, it was going to leadership academies, all of these incredible leadership developments, opportunities that I got through SIGEP really transformed my entire life. But it started with a real relationship. It started with this guy, Mike. It started with these people who wanted to build a connection, someone who showed this investment in me and my personal self, in the entire framing of my life, right? How are you going to do this for your chapter? How are you going to find that incredible brother out there who doesn't see this fraternity life as a way to go, or might be skeptical with the entire picture, and really show them that SIGEP is a place to grow into a truly balanced man? So remember these two key tips as you're going forward, as you're building this year-round plan, genuine relationships and leverage your chapter and alumni connections. And that's it. For the last slide. So just some final things. Feel free to connect with me if you ever want to email me or reach out to me, j.gutierrez1203@gmail.com. Feel free anytime if you have questions about SIGEP or life or career, whatever it is. I'm always available for our brothers. And then also find me on LinkedIn. It won't be hard. I'm wearing glasses and a pink shirt, and it says Tech Recruiter at Google. So feel free to find me there, but happy to connect with you all. And if there's any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Joshua. So everyone, as always, please feel free to start putting questions in the chat, and I can feed them to Joshua here in real time. Question I would love to kick us off with, Joshua, that I hear quite a bit from chapters, and that recruitment services team on SIGEP staff hears quite a bit. Summer can be a time where there may be a lack of motivation among just general chapter members to help with recruitment, whether that's summer recruitment, prepping for fall recruitment efforts, and so on. So what tips would you have to really motivate and rally the chapter behind helping and giving that extra effort towards recruitment throughout the summer months?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, it's really tough too, because I imagine that with a lot of these chapters, it depends on where you're located. So maybe you go home during the summer, maybe you're you're not close to campus, so it can feel a little disconnected from your brothers in those way. I know when I was in college, I was during the summer months, I would go back home and I was working full time when I was back home, so I didn't really always get a chance to engage with SIGEP. But the biggest difference is you all have an incredible opportunity because you now have this virtual space where you can actually leverage some of these connections. And I know we're getting to a place where things are opening back up and people aren't as digital as they were before. But now it's a possibility. So my main suggestion would be try to host any sort of event that you can over Zoom, over Meet, maybe something very short where it's going to actually you're going to actually share something meaningful with PNM. So if it's maybe just like a talk or a discussion or something about how to set up your classes for the fall. But yeah, just I would say like try to leverage these Zoom opportunities, these virtual opportunities the best as possible, because I know getting together in person is just not possible during the summer as much as possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Joshua. Another question I see here in the chat, and this comes from Joshua Ferris at Iowa Theta. And Joshua, I hope I said your last name correctly there. So his question, you mentioned joining in the early winter at UNI. This is close to the end of the semester. So the question here, what is the best way to justify a PNM paying dues for just a couple weeks of an experience? Or maybe Joshua Ferris, if you allow me, maybe expanding on that, what tips do you have as well, Joshua Gutierrez, about just overcoming objections, right, of PNMs, maybe being a little hesitant of joining at the end of a semester?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. I think about this in a few ways. So I know that it's we want to really ensure that students do join, because I know this is a tough part of recruitment, is like, if you don't get someone to join right away, that window kind of closes as time goes on. And I remember that experience really distinctly. But it's really just this whole thing I'm kind of explaining here is trying to build these relationships over time. So even if it is, you'll notice that I put two different timelines for a reason. When I was in SIGEP, it was fall, and then I joined in that winter. Whereas like with my current role and what I do here at Google, I recruit starting in the spring and it really engages in the fall. So I think what I was kind of trying to put out there is maybe those students aren't going to join right away during that experience at the end of that semester. And so it's like, okay, if you know that they're not going to join, how can you build relationships and continue to invite them to events, continue to connect them with members in your chapter who are actually going to be able to engage with them throughout that end of the semester period. And if you do, when you do explain to them about why they should, when it comes to paying dues for a couple weeks of experience, it's really just about showing them what the value is of the chapter that you're bringing and the opportunities and experiences you're bringing as well. Because it's really important that you're, continuing. We heard that just from the last campus that we were mentioning in the examples, was that they offer recruitment events often. So like, what type of events and what type of ways are you trying to engage with brothers in a meaningful way during that time where maybe the semester is ending? So that's where I would try to put all of my eggs in that basket, is like, these are the experiences you're going to get, even though the semester is ending. As soon as we come back to school, and over this time while we're not in school, like, we are going to still have these meaningful experiences, and this is what they look like.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. I've got a question here in the chat, and this comes from Jack Parrish at Ohio New Chapter. So a lot of new members and even the sophomore members at our school have not been to in-person school a lot due to COVID. So maybe the second to third, party or network connection seems to dry up very quick. So the question here, how would you try to recruit more from that base, or building these connections with maybe not so many one-on-one or individual connections off the bat, given that many schools, and it sounds like Ohio knew this was the case, where people either just weren't physically on campus, or maybe they moved off a little bit early?
Wow, that's a really good question. and it's something that, man, it's such a unique experience you all are dealing with. And like, I'd be lying here if I said I had a great answer, because that's such a difficult thing to do, to try to build those relationships virtually. What I can say is, I think it's probably trying to connect them with multiple members in chapter. I would say trying to invite them to, again, any of these experiences that you're having virtually, any of these events you're having virtually, like continue trying to invite them, continue trying to engage with them. I don't know, Pat, do you have any other suggestions here too? Because this is a unique one for me too. Like I never really had to recruit virtually, and it's such a challenge for these students, I could tell.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the context that you threw in there. To add on to that, I would say for those schools that either weren't in person this year, or maybe you had students move out early, because I know that happened quite a bit in the fall, maybe happening this spring as well. To challenge your chapter members, right? Because it shouldn't all fall on you on building these connections, but challenge them to go out and seek opportunities for things that are occurring on campus. Like I'm about to go into a master's program, and I keep getting emails about virtual workshops, symposiums, events. So if you're on like an all virtual campus, just keep an eye out on like student newsletter or other places that typically do or facilitate events on campus that are doing them virtually. Maybe, since finals are coming up, maybe like a stress relief events might be going on, or like study tips. Like get guys in your chapter to show up to that and to talk to people and build connections and relationships. And same thing moving into the summer and the fall. As those opportunities come up, even potentially in-person opportunities, really get your guys there, because I think that's where you're really going to have the opportunities that you missed this year to form some of those connections.
Awesome.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much again, Joshua, for all of the tips and insight, sharing your story and perspectives. We greatly appreciate it.